Good morning out there, and welcome to our first series in history of education in Nigeria. Today, we'll be looking at the historical background to the national policy on education. Nigeria as a nation evolved in 1960 as an independent state from the British colonial rule. Hence, it inherited the British educational system. So, at independence, many Nigerian nationalists and those who were privileged to have studied in Europe and America started agitating that there is a clear need for overhauling the education enterprise, the entire education enterprise in Nigeria. Hence, a policy that will accommodate the indigenous nature of Nigeria and its multi-ethnic groups. So, this agitation was actually a fallout from the Festus Commission of 1922 that looked into education in sub-Saharan Africa and Equatorial and the other part of Africa, and recommended that the education that was given by the then Christian missionaries and the British um, colonial administrators were a far cry to give us development. Hence, there was need for a system of education that was inclusive, that looks at the need of the society to design its curriculum. Hence, these agitations began to yield fruit in 1969. In fact, the first Indigenous National Curriculum Conference, which was organized by the Nigerian Education Research Council, now known as the Nigerian Education Research Development Council, was organized between September 8 and 12 of 1969 in Lagos. And this conference brought together stakeholders in the education enterprise. And what did they do? They looked at the existing educational structure, system, and all what is happening in Nigerian educational system. And recommendation was made at the end of this conference. The recommendations and the proceeding of the conference was put together in a book titled A Philosophy for Nigerian Education, which was compiled by the Rapporteur General of the conference, the late Professor Adeniji Aderelagbe. Now, this became a blueprint to give Nigeria a new policy on education after independence. But all of us the good historians or persons who have good knowledge of the history of Nigeria will know that as at 1969, a war was being prosecuted by Gowon to regain the eastern region, which declared itself a sovereign nation in 1967 under the leadership of the late Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu. And the war lasted till 1970. Hence, Gowon was not interested in signing in a new policy, but he was interested in gaining back the territory known as Nigeria. Now, in 1973, as a follow-up, another one-day seminar was organized by Chief Y.A.K. under the chairmanship of the late Simeon Adebo. And what did he do? He considered the 1969 recommendation, of which one of the recommendation was to adopt the 6334 system as practicable in other nations of the world. Hence, the blueprint was not signed into law until a coup took away Gowon from the office. Now, this coup brought in Murtala. Murtala was revolutionary in his approach to governance. Hence, there was an assassination, and which brought in Olusegun Obasanjo as the head of state. Now, under the leadership of Obasanjo, he was the first to sign into a policy of education in Nigeria. What I refer to an indigenous policy, because before now there have been policies like the British government started looking into education way back 1872 when it started giving grants in AIDS, and subsequently in 1887, in 1882, sorry, in 1882, the first education ordinance came into existence, followed by the 1887, and so on. We've had many education ordinance, 1916, 1926, 1925 memorandum on education, so on, before we got to independence. So our concern in this class, in this education series, is looking at the post-independence education policy. So in 1977, the first national policy on education was signed into law. And since then, we've had various editions of the policy. We've had, it was followed by the 1981, followed by the 1998, then came the 2004, followed by the 2007, then the 2013, which is the sixth edition that is currently being reviewed. This is how Nigeria have fared when it comes to policy on education. In our next series, we'll be looking at the provisions of the policy on education. Thanks. Keep watching and keep sharing.